It is incredibly brave to take this stance after you've made $300, $400 million not being woke, right? Loving Donald Trump, exploiting the mentally ill, wearing blackface. Look at the crop of woke comics, whether it's Stern or Jimmy Kimmel, his BFF, Sarah Silverman, Joy Behar, Michael Ian Black. What do they all have in common? They wore blackface. And then they went woke. It's not a chicken or egg thing there. You know what order it came. So I call this BFR. It's blackface reparations. There's nothing in Stern's previous career that could withstand this modern witch hunt that he now embraces. So this is a form of restitution. Maybe he says, you know, if I'm woke too, the crocodile will eat me last. But they always do eat. But I get it. He flipped from populist to elitist because now he's with elitists.
That the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate. But maybe that's the explanation. This is Stern's self-imposed penance for subjugating women to demoralizing stunts, capitalizing on desperate females thirsting for attention, even if it's from an oily paddle striking their bare.
Howard Stern was once the untouchable force of radio, wild, fearless, and louder than life itself. But when Greg Gutfeld threw a sharp verbal jab at him live on national TV, Stern didn't fight back. He froze. No roar, no comeback, not even a smirk. Just an awkward silence that echoed across the studio like thunder. That silence wasn't calm. It was the collapse. Gutfeld didn't just challenge Stern's image. He lit it on fire with a sly grin, leaving the so-called shock king looking stripped and vulnerable. This wasn't just another TV clash. It was a cultural explosion. The man who used to crush fake personalities with brutal honesty now looked like one himself. And Gutfeld? He saw through the illusion and struck with surgical accuracy. Howard Stern, the rebel. Please, Gutfeld scoffed, practically daring him to respond. But Stern sat there, frozen in disbelief, while the world watched the once mighty lion lose his voice.
You should hear what keeps him up at night.
This is what keeps me up at night. I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there.
Well, he's half right. We do need a wall. You know, to keep out gang members, fentanyl dealers, human traffickers, and Anna Navarro. What's funny, though, is that Stern actually thought that was a compliment. Stern has become such a wussified sycophant, he doesn't realize that telling Kamala that he'd vote for a wall is telling her that he knows she's as dumb as one.
Stern didn't just stay quiet, he shrank before our eyes. Silent, stunned, and suddenly, small. The audience didn't know whether to laugh or gasp. It was surreal. This was the man who built an empire tearing down the elite, and now, he was the elite. Gutfeld exposed it all in one brutal swipe. Stern, once the outlaw of radio, now sipping champagne with celebrities and preaching from a golden pedestal. It was hypocrisy in high definition. Fans weren't just disappointed, they felt betrayed. The same guy who mocked Hollywood's fakeness was now posing at glitzy events and whining about how draining fame is. Hanging out with A-listers was some kind of punishment. Gutfeld didn't even blink as he dropped the mic. Walking from your wine cellar to your tennis court isn't suffering, and the crowd lost it. That wasn't a punchline. It was a brutal reality check. Gutfeld didn't scream. He sliced. It was like he held up a mirror and forced Stern to see the truth he'd been avoiding. Years ago, the old Stern would have exploded with rage. But this version? He looked like a talk show decoration, not the rebel who once had the FCC on speed dial. Gutfeld didn't need a rant. He let Stern's silence say it all. This is what rebellion looks like now, he scoffed. And boom, it hit like a wrecking ball. Stern didn't even realize he had walked into his own downfall until it was far too late.
But that's how Stern can call snacking with celebs at a fancy restaurant exhausting. Exhausting. Like he finished the overnight shift in a coal mine or hearing Kat talk about her pets.
Fair.
But I get it, life is tough, especially when you've been cut off from the world for 2 years in a $20 million beach house. I mean, you have no idea how tiring it is walking all the way from the wine cellar to the tennis court and back.
Howard Stern used to own chaos. He thrived in it, wearing controversy like a crown and crashing through boundaries like a storm. But now, he looked like a man desperate to be accepted by the very crowd he once mocked without mercy. The transformation wasn't just odd, it was heartbreaking. The old Stern would have roasted the current version alive without a second thought. He would have torn into the polished, polite persona sitting there now, acting like a guest at a Hollywood brunch instead of a radio warrior. That burning fire, the one that made him a legend, was gone. Instead of shaking up the system, Stern now whispers approval to the elites. The king of outrage had abandoned his throne for a VIP table at Nobu. Gutfeld could barely believe it. And neither could the stunned audience. This wasn't a rebel. It was a carefully crafted insider act, pretending to still be edgy while basking in the safety of celebrity circles. And the most shocking part? Stern didn't even realize how far he'd fallen. He sat there through Gutfeld's takedown like a declawed lion, soft, slow, and painfully unaware. Gutfeld didn't just criticize, he exposed a total collapse. Stern, the man who once burned fake personas to the ground, had become the exact thing he used to destroy. This wasn't a fight. It was a silent surrender. No rage, no pushback, just a fading legend realizing, too late, that the throne had already been taken. Gutfeld didn't just defeat him. He replaced him. The fire that once lit Stern's world was gone, and in its place, silence, shadows, and a desperate need to still belong.
I will say this, Dagan. I thank God for Howard Stern because he does make me feel normal by comparison. Because I'm like the fox recluse. I don't do anything. I don't go anywhere. But he makes me look like, Pete Davidson on a...
Yeah, he's a germaphobe. Like, his wife rescues cats. That's her job, apparently, her thing. But you can get toxoplasmosis.
That's true.
Cryptosporidiosis.
AIDS.
And
no, you can't.
No,
but
you can't get.
No, you can't.
But you can get.
I mean, what are the chances I get that again?
Like a lot of diarrhea related.
You could feel it in the room. This wasn't just another segment. It was a defining moment in television history. While Stern lounged in luxury, clinging to old headlines and celebrity praise, Gutfeld was in the trenches, building a new kingdom, one truth bomb at a time. The throne wasn't snatched from Stern. It was abandoned by him. And Gutfeld didn't hesitate for a second. He stepped right in and claimed it with clarity and confidence. The audience didn't just watch. They witnessed a fall from grace unfold live, without edits or excuses. No yelling, no theatrics, just the raw sting of truth wrapped in sarcasm and aired to millions in real time. Some TV moments vanish in a day, but this one, it etched itself into the culture like a scar that never heals. This wasn't just Gutfeld mocking Stern. It was one era devouring another, right before our eyes. And the look on Stern's face said everything. He knew it. He didn't need a zoomed-in shot for us to see the panic. It poured out of him like sweat under those blinding studio lights. The man who once reigned over the mic now looked like he wanted to hide beneath it. The irony couldn't have been sharper. Stern, the slayer of phonies, now sitting there as a polished, unrecognizable shell of who he once was. Gutfeld didn't exaggerate. He just pointed and said, "This is real." And what the world saw was devastating. A legend unraveling in real time, stripped of the very rebellion that made him matter. Stern hadn't just changed. He had walked away from everything he once stood for. And Gutfeld didn't just let it pass. He held up a mirror, forced the world to look, and then dropped the hammer. The internet erupted. Clips of the clash went viral, and that moment transformed from a TV shocker to a cultural reckoning.
On his radio show, Howard Stern defended wokeism, saying it's a compliment when someone calls him woke. Listen.
If woke means I can't get behind Trump, which is what I think it means, or that I support people who want to be transgender, or I'm for the vaccine, well, dude.
Stern got even more pathetic, wondering how she doesn't nap.
When you said you don't nap, I get it, because like what you've taken on is extraordinarily difficult. And I mean, do you feel the pressure of the moment in the sense that, like when I met you out in the hall, I said, I'm really nervous because I want this to go well for you. I want it to go well for the country.
Gutfeld didn't need to scream or pound the desk. He wielded his words like a blade, cutting through the noise with deadly precision. And once those words hit the air, the internet lit up like wildfire. Viewers didn't just laugh, they recognized the truth. This wasn't some wild accusation, it was a quiet truth finally shouted out loud. Stern's slow, painful shift had been obvious for years, but Gutfeld forced it into the spotlight where no one could ignore it anymore. And this takedown didn't come from some critic. It came from another rebel, someone who built his success by being raw, bold, and unfiltered. The very thing Stern used to be. People had whispered for years that Stern wasn't the same. But this moment blew the lid off. Even Stern's most loyal followers couldn't deny it. Something had changed, and it wasn't for the better. Gutfeld didn't just jab at his ego. He exposed a deep crack in Stern's legacy, one too big to plaster over. This wasn't a fight about politics. It was about truth versus image. And when it came down to it, Gutfeld stood strong, while Stern sat frozen in a suit that no longer fit the rebel he once was. Stern, once fearless with his words, now looked like he was too polished, too scared, too soft. And as the clip went viral, racking up views by the millions, the public made their decision. Stern's silence wasn't grace. It was surrender. The man who used to shake headlines with every word suddenly had nothing left to say. His defenders rushed in, trying to claim he had evolved or matured. But fans weren't fooled. No one mistook silence for wisdom. They saw what it really was. A retreat from everything that made Stern iconic. He hadn't grown. He'd vanished in plain sight.
But Stern being holed up in his house that long, it explains a lot of things, like how you forget how other people live, especially in hard times like a pandemic. For the longest time, 2 years in fact, the same time Stern's been AWOL, I wondered where he went. Not physically, but mentally. I bet you did too. Remember his screeds about COVID? They were epic and angry, and not to mention wrong.
When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say, it's mandatory to get vaccinated? F them, f their freedom. I want my...
What made it all sting even more was Stern's silence. It was absolute, and it was deafening. No passionate monologue the next day, no fiery radio rant, not even a half-hearted joke. The same man who once obliterated presidents and roasted celebrities now sat completely quiet as his empire crumbled in real time. And that's what cut deepest. Gutfeld didn't win with volume, he won with undeniable truth. One brutal observation sliced through all of Stern's old tricks, and the legend didn't even flinch to defend himself. The man who used to say anything suddenly looked terrified to say anything. This wasn't evolution, it was erasure. And while Stern faded into silence, Gutfeld surged into the spotlight. Every uncomfortable pause, every awkward smile, gave Gutfeld more ground, until suddenly, the power dynamic flipped completely. By the end of the week, the story wasn't about Stern's legacy, it was about his collapse. The internet devoured it, memes exploded, headlines screamed, "Stern has gone soft," and Gutfeld grabs the mic. It wasn't just entertainment, it was a digital funeral for everything Howard Stern used to stand for. Gutfeld was ruthless, but strategic. He didn't deny Stern's past glory. He praised it, then contrasted it with the safe, watered-down version of him, now rubbing elbows with the elites. That's what made it hurt. It wasn't mockery, it was disappointment. People remembered the Stern who tore down the Oscars, who fearlessly tackled power, who reveled in raw chaos. But now, he was playing nice with politicians, flattering celebrities, and fading under the very spotlight he once owned. And Gutfeld? He didn't let up. He kept pulling receipts, pointing out how Stern once joked about anything, no matter how dark, and now recoiled from the slightest satire like it was radioactive. It felt like watching a once great warrior trying to blend in at a cocktail party. Even Stern's recent interviews betrayed him. Gone were the boundary-breaking questions, replaced with soft flattery and hand-holding. He wasn't challenging the powerful anymore. He was serving them hors d'oeuvres and asking for selfies. Gutfeld knew the symbolism. This wasn't just a feud, it was a funeral. And Stern didn't fight for his legacy. He let it go, step by step, party by party, praise by praise. The fire was gone, and everyone watching felt it. Fans, critics, even casual viewers saw it clearly. Stern was no longer the rebel. He was just another guest on the red carpet. And the shift? It wasn't subtle, it was staggering. One of the worst moments came when Stern, trying to show political support, told Kamala Harris he'd vote for that wall over there, unaware he was comparing her brain to a brick. That wasn't edgy. It was embarrassing. And Gutfeld didn't need to twist it. Stern was handing him the material, unfiltered and unguarded. The same man who built his brand on mocking hollow fame was now living in it, guarded not by truth, but by handlers and champagne flutes.
I watch them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you. I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Oh my God.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now, I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
So a guy who's supposed to be funny for a living now claims her candidacy is too important to joke about. This is a guy who once joked right after the Columbine massacre that the killers should have raped the students before killing them. Not that I like that, Stern, but this pendulum swing from saying the most tasteless thing in the universe to putting your balls in a Tic Tac container. You gotta wonder what's going on here. It's striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate.
The truth didn't need flashy graphics or dramatic music. It just needed someone brave enough to say it out loud. And Gutfeld did exactly that. He walked onto that stage with laser focus, not fury, and ripped the curtain back on everything Stern had become. With each line, Gutfeld held up a mirror and forced the world to see what was hiding in plain sight. And the audience? They didn't need convincing. They'd seen the change for years. Now, they were watching it unravel in real time, broadcast in HD for the world to witness. The most painful part of it all? Stern thought this new version of himself was growth. He honestly believed that soft tones and polished manners were signs of maturity. But in reality, he'd handed over the very thing that made him powerful. He didn't evolve. He surrendered. Gutfeld knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't have to scream. He didn't have to rant. He laid out the truth like side-by-side snapshots, the fierce, unpredictable Stern of the past, and the quiet, polished one today. And the audience didn't laugh because it was funny. They laughed because it was tragic. The guy who once joked about Columbine now flinches at satire, Gutfeld said with a raised eyebrow, and that single line dropped like a hammer in the room. No one responded, not even Stern. That silence wasn't power. It was collapse. Stern didn't rise above it. He vanished into it. He didn't transform. He erased everything that once made him matter. He filed down every edge, buried every risk, and handed the world a dull, safe version of himself. But the fans didn't want that. They didn't tune in for safety. They came for the chaos, the honesty, the danger. And when Stern stepped back, Gutfeld didn't just take his place. He lit up the stage and reminded the world what real courage sounds like. This wasn't a generational clash. It was a gut check. And in that moment, only one man had the guts to swing, and swing hard. One stayed raw and real. The other faded into a puff of celebrity perfume and polished silence.
Happy Friday, America! Oh man, tonight is a special night. It's Feminine Friday, where all the panelists are women. Tonight we have Kennedy. Yeah! David McDowell. Kat Tim. And Janine Garofalo. All right. A long way for a meat joke. Okay, I hope you had a good week. I did, and no thanks to Howard Stern. True, the New York Post reported that Stern hit a chic restaurant in NYC with a crew of A-listers, including Jimmy Kimmel, Jennifer Aniston, Jon Hamm, Justin Theroux, Jason Bateman. I was not invited.
Gutfeld still had the fire. And Stern? He gave his away, piece by piece, trading rebellion for applause from people who never truly respected him. When Stern whined about being exhausted after dinner with celebrities, the public didn't feel sorry. They cringed. Exhausted from what? People asked. From sipping wine under mood lighting? From pretending to be edgy while obsessing over party invites and Hollywood praise? Even Stern's loyal fans couldn't defend it anymore. They saw what he'd become, and it broke their hearts. The lion of radio had turned into a pampered house pet. The man who once shouted through airwaves now whispered about being tired from walking across his mansion. This wasn't satire. It was sad. And Gutfeld didn't have to scream. He smirked, said a few sharp lines, and the illusion shattered. Because rebellion isn't about fame, it's about fearlessness. You can't be the voice of the people while tiptoeing through Beverly Hills, terrified of offending your dinner guests. Stern's silence after the segment wasn't graceful. It was hollow. No fight, no fire, not even a flicker of the man who once tore through hypocrisy like a wrecking ball. What we saw was the quiet fade of someone who used to crush giants, now flinching at shadows. Stern didn't just lose the crown. He handed it over without a word. This wasn't a feud. It was a symbolic funeral. The rebel who once defied the world now begged to be accepted by it. And no PR team, no excuse, no spin could undo what millions had just witnessed. It happened live. And it stuck. Gutfeld didn't just criticize Stern. He replaced him. He didn't shock for attention. He told the truth. And in a world starving for realness, that's what hit hardest. Stern is slipping quietly into the background now, a former renegade turned reputation manager. Meanwhile, Gutfeld stands loud, raw, and completely unapologetic. Because when the dust settles, the world doesn't remember the ones who whispered in fear. They remember the ones who shouted truth without flinching. And on that night, under the bright lights, it wasn't Stern who stood tall. It was Gutfeld, unshaken, fearless, and undeniably in control.